Hey everybody, my name is Bethany. Welcome to my online YouTube channel. I'm so glad you're here today. If you haven't subscribed, you can do so below. Today we're going to be working on this beautiful beach scene. I'm excited to paint something different for you today, so let's get started. I'm starting off with some scrap sanded paper from my scrap collection, and using a ruler I'm going to make a simple reference for my horizon line, and I am concentrating on making sure this horizon line is not in the middle of the paper. My paper is a little crooked down there at the bottom, but I'll trim that off once the painting is complete. The reference for this painting is from a beautiful evening spent with friends on the Kona coast of the Big Island of Hawai'i. A beautiful night spent watching the waves and the sunset, laughing with friends. It's a wonderful memory. When I'm painting a cloud, sunset, or skyscape, I always start by indicating the dark portions of the clouds. This is a little different version than my cloud painting from several videos ago, but still the same concept where I paint in the cloud shapes first and then I'm going to cut the sky into the clouds. I'm adding several value layers into the sky, and I am checking my reference every now and then just to make sure that I have the right values where they belong. Now I'm using a piece of pipe foam to scrub in this first layer of pastel just to help cover the tooth a little bit more. And it also creates kind of a wispy effect that I like to use when I'm painting my clouds. Now I'm going to add in a hint of sky at the very top, and just kind of testing the values using a very light touch in the broad side of this pastel, cutting in the sky layers into the cloud shapes. It's always fun to start adding in the sunset colors into any painting that has some kind of dramatic sky. This is a coral, a very mid-value coral pastel, and I'm whisking it into the clouds just to blend it a little bit. I like to use the foam because it saves my fingertips from getting abrasion on them from the sanded paper. I'm continuing to add details into the sky of this piece. Right now, this is a little lighter value, and I'm using smaller movements now because I'm trying to start to add a little more detail. Now that I have the basic shapes, I am adding in values and a little harder edges, making a little bit more refined judgments on where my marks will be, to indicate just where the sky meets the clouds. Whenever I'm working on a very divided composition with the sky and the horizon line being very strong, I usually work from top to bottom. This prevents the pastel from migrating onto the pastel below and making it look kind of dusty, or if any light pigments went to stick to the darker pigments below. As you can see, I added a very dark, almost black blue pastel to indicate the edge of the ocean, and made a little mistake there, but pastels are easy to just whisk over if you're using a very light touch. As with building up clouds from darkest to light, I will build the ocean up in a similar way. This is charcoal, and I am making indications of lines for the shadows of the distant waves as they roll in as the tide comes in. I'm bringing in a very dark ultramarine blue and rolling just the corner of it along the tip-top edge of the charcoal to indicate the tops of the waves. I'm continuing to fill the pastel down and adding layers of waves coming in and shadows. This is a very almost brown pastel, which you wouldn't think would be in an ocean scene, but it is reflecting the orange sky above, and so it's indicating that color. This is, I added a little bit more ultramarine blue, and I am whisking it in to blend using the foam insulation. Pulling the pipe foam insulation down with your pastels is a great way to indicate reflections. If you haven't used foam pipe to save your fingertips, it is very inexpensive. I get it at my local home improvement store. You can get a big long, like 6-foot piece of it for about $2. Now I am continuing to add, I'm just layering the colors, layering the values in, and here's another piece of charcoal that I'm indicating these very front-facing shadows of the rolling waves coming in. I'm going to start adding detail to the front waves coming in, and so using ultramarine and cobalt blues, I will be making the broad side of my pastels. I am starting at the top and almost gently just tapping the pastel where I want to indicate foam and just these rolling waves. Also using just the very lightest edge. That's why I love square pastels. They're wonderful for making hard or soft edges. If you make any kind of little mistake, you can just whip your palette knife out there. You know that I love to use a palette knife. If you haven't watched that episode here on my channel explaining my palette knife use, here it is for you right here, a link above. I'll finish out the bottom of this pastel with more of this dark blue value, and then whisk in the pastel to cover the tooth with the foam. You'll notice that I'm working my way up in value whenever I'm indicating the waves, much like I do with trees or with any kind of cloud formation. I like to start with the darker value first, make that the base layer to indicate shadows and create depth and shape within the piece. And then I work up to the finer, lighter values for added detail. I am using a very light tapping and flicking motion to indicate the waves crashing down onto this beach. It's important to think about what you're painting when you're painting, and that will help guide you whenever you are unsure of what kind of mark to make with your pastels. Continuing to add layers of value and color. This is a flat piece between the two waves, and adding just some more reflections, blending it in, really concentrating on finer details in the piece. These are some golden light showing onto the clouds, adding in a little bit more details into the sky. This is the part of the painting where I'm very careful on the details that I'm adding. We're approaching the end of the piece, and this is when you have to be careful not to go too far. You don't want to lose the freshness of your marks or the spontaneous decisions that you make. Sometimes they're almost serendipitous decisions. I'm sure I'm not the only one that sometimes looks at their painting at the end of it and thinks, now how did I do that? I want to create almost a vignette effect at the bottom. It helps lead the viewer's eye if you don't have very bright colors on the very edges of your piece, to lead the eye into the center of the painting, which is where the center of interest is in this scene. Adding very small little marks to indicate the the waves crashing and the sea spray that forms. It's hard to do that with this little painting. The bigger the painting, the easier it is because you make bigger marks. But as you know, I love to create small works pieces. I'm continuing to work smaller and smaller with the marks that I'm making, now adding a slight reflection between the waves and that flat section of the water, and then also adding a little strip of reflection right there in the foreground. These elements help lead the eye into the center of the painting. I wouldn't want to add reflections on the four sides, near the edges of the piece, because that might guide the viewer's eye to the edge and then out of my painting, and I want them to stay within the waves. I want to define the distant shadow line of that second wave, so I'm adding a slightly lighter value that I'm going to blend it in just slightly with my finger. And now I'm going to fix that distant horizon line and straighten it up a little bit. It got kind of fuzzy. Now, if this were a bright sunshine, reflected ocean, I would probably not have such a distinct horizon line, but since it is sunset, then there is a definite difference between the sky and the water. Lightening up the sky just a little bit in some areas and putting in my very final touches. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's installment here on my YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, you can do so below. I would love your comments, likes, and your shares as well. You can also visit my blog at bethanyfieldsblog.com or my website at bethanyfields.com. Both have more information about this piece and my work. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.